friends and crafters, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Deepa Robbins from DeeZinesByD, and today I have another Scrappy Tails post to share with you. So I've noticed recently that I do tend to just grab my Copics to do coloring like all of the time. So I decided I wanted to change up what I use as my coloring media, and today I'm going to show you how to use Nuvo Drops and a bit of Stickles to color in these beautiful images from Scrappy Tails Crafts. So let's go ahead and look at the products we're going to use today. First of all, I have the 6x6 inch paper pack. This is new. It's new to the Scrappy Tails store, and it's also available in 12 by 12 inches. You have 24 pages and 12 designs. Then I also have this cover plate, which is the A2 size triangle cover plate, and this beautiful stamp set. Now I'm also going to be using all of these Nuvo Drops and a few Stickles. And if you're like me, you may have your Nuvo Drops from a long time ago and you haven't quite used them or stored them properly. So I am going to show you how to clean out your bottles if you do have Nuvo Drops and they've kind of got gummed up and they're not really coming out of the nozzle. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this yellow one here. And the first thing you're going to want to do is have a piece of paper towel and a piece of card. I'm going to show you here, there's nothing coming out of this bottle. Absolutely nothing. Nothing's flowing. It's clogged. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab a small little pin and I'm going to stick it through the nozzle. Now, once you've done that, you'll probably get a bit of the junk or the gummed up Nuvo Drops on it. Then you want to open up the nozzle tip, take it out, and you'll see, if you squeeze it, you'll see that there's nice, new, clean Nuvo Drops underneath. So all you really have to do is remove that gross gummed up bit from the top, which mine came out easily. Some of them come out a little less easily. You just got to clean it out nicely. And then you've also got to clean it out from that nozzle. So I'm basically just using that tip of that pin. This is actually just one of those pins that you use to put inside your glue bottle and make sure your glue doesn't dry up. You could also use a safety pin. Or if you're a sewer, you probably have some fastening pins that you could use. Now also make sure to stick it up through that nozzle the opposite way as well to get out anything else that's stuck. Now that I think that's pretty clean, I'm going to stick the top back on and you can see how nicely that flows. So I actually had to clean up a lot of my Nuvo Drops bottles this way before I could use them for this technique. So I just wanted to show you that because I'm pretty sure you have some bottles that you could clean like this. Don't throw it away. They can always be saved. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to cut out that A2 size triangle cover plate. It's important that you use a shim because this is a bit more intricate and you don't want to have to put it through your die cutting machine a million times to try to get it to cut properly. Or at least that's what I end up doing. So the shim really comes in handy. Now, for little bits like this, I like to use my tool-in-one, which is actually from Spellbinders. It just helps me get all the little pieces out of my die cut piece along with the cover plate. And then I use a little pick to get out the extra little pieces that I can't get. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp out my images. Now I'm not just going to stamp them, I'm going to heat emboss them with clear white embossing powder. And this is an important step because what it's going to do is it creates a raised surface wherever that image is stamped so that it creates a bit of a well and it allows you to add your Nuvo Drops without covering up the actual stamped image. I'll touch more on this when we actually go to coloring it in with the drops. But as you can see, I'm using some VersaFine Clear Nocturne ink here. I love this ink because it stamps out so nicely. And I usually only have to stamp once. I did do it twice this time because these images are so intricate. Not to mention, if you weren't familiar with the VersaFine Clear and the difference between that and the VersaFine Clear stays wet just a little bit longer. So you can do techniques like this where you have to actually add some embossing powder to it. So do keep that in mind. If you do use it for something else, you probably have to heat set it and make sure it's not going to smudge unless you can let it dry for a while. So I've added some Ranger Clear embossing powder here and I'm just heating it up with my heat tool. Now keep in mind this is clear embossing powder, so you can kind of see that it's melting. It becomes clear and glossy, but sometimes it's hard to tell. So I kind of hold it up like this to see at eye level anywhere that the embossing powder or the pattern where it's been stamped seems dull. It probably needs to have a bit more heat applied so that it melts. Now the next step is going to be cutting these out with my coordinating dies. So one thing I want to mention about this card, because we're coloring this image in with Nuvo Drops, it's going to be wet. It's going to be hard to move things around and adhere them unless you leave it overnight to dry. So I'm basically going to put the whole card together and then I will add the Nuvo Drops at the end. So I've got all those little images cut out. Now I will work on my sentiment. I'm using one of the sentiments from the set that says, "You are my sunshine." And I'm just going to stamp that out again with some Versamark ink, and I will heat emboss that with some Hero Arts white detail embossing powder. So I've decided to do this on the black and do it with white embossing powder because it stands out a little more, and my card's going to be mainly white. Now I've got the coordinating die here. I love the stamp and the coordinating die set that Scrappy Tails released, this past release, because it cuts out all of the sentiments, and that's basically my sweet spot. I love that. And now moving on to the actual pattern paper, I'm grabbing this piece with all of these beautiful leaves, and I'm just going to cut a 2-inch panel. And I'm going to use this basically as a band across the bottom of my card just to create a bit of color, a little bit of variation in my card as well. So at this point, I've decided that I want to make sure that that pattern paper blends in with the background and has a nice clean edge. So I've cut off a strip of gold glitter paper, gold glitter cardstock. This is Sizzix Opulent Gold Glitter Cardstock. And I will attach it to the edge of that panel, so that once I attach it to my card, it just has a nice clean edge. I have a habit of doing this. I find that the metallics really help you do this, and without it, it kind of just looks not complete to me, but that's just me. You might be fine leaving it how it is. It's completely up to you and the look that you're going for. So now I've adhered it to the bottom of that triangle lattice, that cover plate piece. And I have the A2 sized card base ready. So that's a white card base, again, A2 sized. And I decided I wanted not to just stick this lattice piece or this triangle cover plate die piece right onto the cardstock. I wanted to stick it up with some foam. So I actually create my own foam strips here. I've got some craft foam, and all I do is stick some Elizabeth Craft double-sided adhesive in the wide form, so it's about 2 inches in width, and I stick it on either side of the craft foam, and then I'll take my guillotine cutter to cut these slim strips from it so that I can do techniques like this. I also cut some larger strips, as you can see, that I used on the bottom. Now I also have these really small micro squares, which are perfect for techniques like this. So I just use my little pick for my die cut, and I just grab the little squares and I'm adding it to those small little circles of the lattice. Now I don't always do this, and I find that it causes the card to kind of collapse a bit, and also it could kind of tear if it's sent in an envelope through the mail. So this just gives it a bit of strength, and it sticks up a little more and has a bit more structure. Now, if you're like me and you hate fiddling with the little backing pieces, I actually just take my my tweezers here and I use them to take off all of those little pieces. It really helps rather than using your fingers. If you're like me and you have nails like this, it's kind of hard to do. With your natural nails, it's probably much easier. So once that's all done, I'll go ahead and attach it to my card base. And this cover plate works such that it has a bit of a border around the edge, which looks absolutely gorgeous. So you can see it has that bit of dimension and a bit of shading created there because of that lattice. Now I'm going to go ahead and attach these die cut pieces that I've heat embossed. And I'm going to add that main cockatoo image to the bottom left. As you can see, I also cut out another hibiscus flower and a leafy vine, which I'm going to add to the top corner here. And it's just going to have kind of all of the image and all the good stuff going on in the bottom left or bottom left diagonal of this card. Now I've added my sentiment on there with some foam tape for a bit more dimension. And I think I'm about ready to color in with my Nuvo Drops. So I'm starting with Nuvo Drops. This is the crystal version. So it will go on and I'll have a bit of a transparency to it. So it's not going to be solid. You can see through it. This color is actually called Key Lime, and I'm just going to be using it on the top feathered portion, that little bit of a mane above its beak, and then the bottom feathers behind its legs underneath the branch. So, as I said, this is a nice bright color, and because it is a little transparent, it's kind of hard to see. So, I thought I had to add a little bit more to it. So, I'm adding some of this lime green Stickles to the spiky portions of the feathers and just in different areas amongst the other parts that are this greeny color. And that's just going to make it stand out a little more and give it a little bit of shine and shimmer. And you notice that I have a paper towel to the side there. I'm constantly wiping off my nozzles. So this is a great way to maintain your Nuvo Drops and your Stickles and make sure that they don't get gummed up. Now, a cockatoo doesn't really have too much color. There's more grays and whites in it, and that can become a bit challenging with Nuvo Drops. However, they do have a wide range of colors, so I'm actually using some silver lining for the darker gray, and then I'm using some oyster gray for the lighter grays on this cockatoo. Now, it's important to note that these are not jewel drops. So the key lime that I used on the top feathers was jewel drops. So they have that transparent feature where you can kind of see through. So if I did go over the black lines that we had embossed, you can still see them. So I didn't have to be too careful. But with the crystal drops, they have an opaque feature to them. So when you do put them on your die cut piece here and you color with them, if you put too much on top of the black areas that you stamped out, it will cover it up. And then you won't see all of those little details that have been added in these beautiful stamped images. So be careful to kind of color in around those lines, just like you would color if, say, you were using marker. What you can do is you can go over it, but make sure that it's a very thin coat that goes over the black lines. Now for the flowers, I'm actually using some carnation pink for the center bit of the flower, which is the highlighted portion. And then for the darker areas, which is going to be the deeper vibrant portion, I'm using some red berry. So by using the two colors, not only am I creating more interest by having the variation of color, but I can create depth with this. So it's kind of like coloring in using your Copics using different shades. You're using different shades of Nuvo instead of different shades of Copics. So you can see you still get the same kind of effect, but now you're using your Nuvo Drops instead. For the centers of those flowers, I actually use some Sunburst Stickles because it is a yellow glittery color. So this works perfect for the center of those hibiscus flowers. Now I've gone ahead and colored in the two other flowers as well. And I'm sorry that my hand covers up a lot of the coloring, but when you are doing this, you have to kind of keep your nozzle upright. Otherwise, it's going to catch too much of the Nuvo Drops that you've already added. Now for the rest of the greenery, I'm mainly going to be using this woodland green. And again, this is more of an opaque, it's a crystal drop. So I can easily add this. You can see the tips of your Nuvo Drops are perfect for these smaller images too. You just kind of add them to all of the beautiful little leafy bits. And then I'll probably add some Stickles for some shine. And in this case, I'll be adding some jade. Jade is like a beautiful deep green and gives a nice sparkle for those tropical leaves. That's going to kind of add some contrast to that beautiful lime green Stickles, which was added to the cockatoo. Now you can see as I'm adding the green Nuvo Drops to the leaves, the thinner leaves, it's fair. You can just see the green on it. But when you have the larger fan leaves, you can see that I'm not adding, the same thickness of Nuvo Drops amongst the whole leaf. And this is how you create depth and shine. So now I have a bit of highlights all over that leaf, especially that one you see right behind the cockatoo there. It just gives a really nice realistic look along with that leaf that I just did on the bottom there. So now I'll just go ahead and add those Nuvo Drops to all of the beautiful leaves. And once you get going with this technique, you'll realize that it's pretty simple and easy to do. I do want to mention that if you do have problems with your hands and squeezing, this will end up being a bit of a problem. So you might want to stick to another coloring medium, or you could even squeeze some of these out and actually use a paintbrush to paint in the images. So now I've got my jade green as I mentioned, and I'm just going to add it to the little center bits of those larger banana type looking leaves. I'm not sure exactly what type of leaves they're called, but it's just adding some shine and some more variation to the colors I'm using. You'll see if you once this is complete that the card, it doesn't even look like I use Nuvo Drops. I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, looks like I actually used some Copics or something to color these in, but it does give a bit of a different look, and not to mention the entire thing is going to be beautifully glossy once you're done. So now I'm just going to add a bit more highlighting with the Stickles to the leaves. I am using some more of the lime colored or the citrus lime Stickles. Keep in mind that all of the Nuvo Drops and the Stickles and everything that I've used today will be linked within the description below within my blog. And you can go ahead and check out all the products that I use there, along with a bit of a description of how I put this together as well. Now I have some mercury glass. There is like a bit of a branch there, and I don't really have a brown, so I thought that this would work. It's just a small portion. Seems to work pretty well. And that's how the final colored Nuvo Drop image looks like. Now to finish it off, I'm adding some bubble gum Pink Fresh Studio Jewels, just a few here and there to kind of bring out the pink that was in those beautiful flowers. And after I add the last few embellishments, that's pretty much it for this card. So I hope you've been inspired to create something similar yourself. Grab some Nuvo Drops, do some coloring, clean them out a bit, and maybe even just explore your craft room and find different ways to use different media on your cards for coloring. Everything that I've used in this video is linked within my blog, which is linked in the description below, so don't forget to check that out. There's a bunch more inspiration there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. Hit the notification bell to be notified of future videos. I'll see you guys again next time, and I hope to see you then. Bye.